What is up, guys? Welcome back to Asgard, and welcome to a mod spotlight on Tainted Magic. It's a fairly newer mod, and it's actually an addition to Thaumcraft. So I've been playing around with it for a bit today, and I've been having a ton of fun with it. It's actually really neat. It adds a lot of emphasis to actually using warp and getting warp, and some of the stuff that it adds is actually really amazing. So let's dive on into it. For starters, it adds a few blocks into the game, mainly just one ore block, and then there's some saplings that you can create as well. So the ore block is the shadow metal, and you can get it either from mining, or there's actually a transmutation here that you can do with just smooth stone. Use some metallum, percantio, tenebrae, and vacuos, and that's going to get you shadow ore. But it seems like it's a bit more reasonable just to mine it, unless you have, you know, a surplus of aspects to use to transmute it. But it's going to add the shadow ore, and if you mine it, you just get the respective ore block. And then what you can do with this is you can either combine it with pyrotheum to get your shadow metal, or you can throw it in a crucible with some aspects to get your shadow metal. Just whichever you prefer. And then that shadow metal, we're going to use a bit here in just a minute. It also adds these two trees. The first is just this warpwood tree, and you can craft this, which is some zombie brains, diamonds, warp shards, and oak saplings. And the warp shards, by the way, I almost forgot. The way you're going to get these is by putting a balance shard into a crucible with 4 alienists, and then there's also flux shards that you get with vidium and a balance shard, which of course those are just for crafting. This warpwood tree, it does have respective planks which actually look really nice. Let me pull up okay, we've got this warpwood and then these warpwood planks. Personally, I feel like they look really nice, kind of like just a dark blue, and I could see myself using them. I really love the color. And then you've got this nice wood as well, which is also very nice looking. By the way, I do have mobs turned on. We're going to be using them in a minute, because this mod does primarily add equipment. If you notice here on the side, and I've got caps lock on, that's fine. But anyway, that warpwood tree, you're just going to get, of course, the respective wood, and you'll also get saplings from the tree. They're not super common, but from my testing and stuff, I tend to get 1 or 2 per tree that I cut down. Then there's also this awakened warpwood tree, which you're going to get with just a warpwood sapling and then 2 of the void seeds from just standard Thaumcraft. And this one, I absolutely love this, because I always hated getting void seeds when I was playing, playing around with standard Thaumcraft. And this one, if you dig down here along the middle section, right there, if you notice, that is dense warpwood. So let's just jump over here to survival really quick. And if you break this, of course this you're just going to get standard warpwood, but this one, if you cut this down, you notice we just got 4 void seeds from that. And there's always going to be a block of dense warpwood in these awakened ones. And of course you can use these void seeds to make more awakened ones. As far as saplings go, this tree is only going to drop standard saplings, but you're going to get 4 to 10 void seeds per tree, which is really nice. Next up, I'm just kind of going through the book, because there's a lot here, and like I said, most of it's equipment and stuff. Next up, it does add a new type of staff and a new wand, and it also adds some wand caps. So we'll go ahead and jump into the wand caps first. The first one, the tier 1, is these cloth wand caps that you can make with just enchanted fabric, and they grant you a 5% V discount on these. Then there's the crimson cloth, which we'll get into how to make crimson cloth here in just a little bit. All the crimson stuff. These are made with crimson fabric and give you a 10% V discount. And then there's the shadow ones, made with shadow cloth, which we'll get into in a minute, and Salus Mundus, giving you a 15% V discount. And then there's also, on top of that, there's these shadow metal ones, which are a little bit more expensive. You're going to need a warp shard, you're going to need some shadow metal, void metal, charged void metal caps, and primordial pearl, which of course that drops from the bosses in the outer worlds. So you're going to have to be pretty far into Thaumcraft to make these, but they do grant you a 30% discount, which is really, really nice, and it doesn't consume the primordial pearl when you craft it. So that's your options for the wand caps. Now if we look at the wands, the rod and the core, the wand and the staff, sorry. The Warpwood rod is fairly expensive as well, requiring a bit of shadow metal, a bit of void metal, warp shard, zombie brain, and then once again this primordial pearl, which it doesn't state in the book that it requires it. I mean that it doesn't require it, but I don't believe that it requires the pearl. I know the staff does not. So if we look at the staff core, it's not consumed. And it's just going to take 2 of the rods and then the primordial pearl, as well as 120 of all your primal aspects. So you're going to have a decent wand in order to craft this. But I did notice a typo. This wand says it's able to store up to 500 of each aspect. That's not the case. Let's actually craft one up really, really quick. So let me grab the rods and the staff. And let's get some shadow metal caps. Sounds good. So if I make the rod here, you notice the capacity is only 250. But what's really, really nice about this wand that I absolutely love is, if you notice, now I've got 2 of every aspect. We'll give it just a second. There we go, 3. And it's going to keep repairing itself and just absorbing aspects. Now what it's doing is the more warp that I've accumulated, the faster that it recharges. And, you know, this alone, just having this passive regen effect on your wand makes it very, very nice to have. Because theoretically you could, unless you're just doing a ton of combat or a ton of, you know, using your focuses on your wands, it's going to be a little bit tougher to run out of mana with this thing. It's really, really nice. The staff, let's go ahead and get that crafted really, really quick. The staff does have the 500 capacity, and it also does regenerate itself, you know, as we carry it, which is also really, really nice. So both of those I feel like are very, very nice wands and staves. All of a sudden, a natural hunger. Okay, so that pretty much covers those. Right over here, it does add some new food into the game. It adds this magic croissant and this croissant of creation. So this magic croissant is just 3 bread and then a shard. It restores 2.5 hunger bars and gets you a burst of effects. And then this croissant of creation requires a shard of creation and 100 of every aspect to make. These shards of creation are right here. They require void essence, void seeds, nether stars, primordial pearls. Very, very expensive. Void essences requiring ethereal essence and some vacuos and tenebrae. Very, very expensive, but this croissant of creation is crazy. So let's jump over to survival mode really, really quick, and let me grab magic croissant and a croissant of creation. And there we go. So if we eat this magic croissant, oh, I've got this stupid effect right now. Okay, but we should still get the effects of it. You notice I just got speed 3, haste 3, and regeneration 3 from eating this food. So it's very, very powerful food. Gives you those short bursts of effects. Now this croissant of creation, if we were to eat this one, you notice we got speed, haste, regeneration, resistance, and I believe there was another one down there. Yeah. Oh, and we're getting a bunch of effects, but anyway, what this does is this gives you a insane amount of saturation, as well as any time that we take damage, we get a fairly fast regen speed take a little bit of damage here. See, it's regenning my health as fast as I can take damage. And I'm not wearing any armor minus this, which I can take that off. But until that saturation and this effect and everything wears off of this magical croissant, I'm not going to take any damage from pretty much anything, unless it's just a massive amount of damage. But it does restore your health nearly instantly. So it's very, very nice food, albeit very expensive as well, though. Next up, and like I said, it does give you a ton of saturation. I actually haven't managed to run out of the saturation before when I was testing it. In the book here it states that the people that made it, the Eldritch that made it, would only have to eat once a week or even months. So I'm assuming that the saturation is so high that you're not going to need food for quite a while after consuming this. And the effects of it are very nice. Anyway, next up, let's continue looking at some of this shadow metal stuff. So you can get these warped goggles of revealing. You just use a couple warp shards, shadow metal, and then your standard goggles of revealing. And I had these on earlier. If you notice what they do, they give you a decent amount of protection, as well as warping 1 and a V discount of 5%. But what I found was really wild about these goggles, and it says in here, it seems that one of the lenses became clouded with warp, causing you to have strange visions at times. I did notice some weird like effects and stuff. I don't know the full extent of the visions. They don't seem to happen all that often. But you know, they do add a nice little bit of flair. I don't know. I've only seen them like once or twice, so they don't seem terribly common, but they are there. So just be aware of that if you throw these on. But it's nice having the protection in combination with the goggles of revealing. So the shadow cloth that we mentioned earlier just takes some enchanted fabric and shadow metal, and it's just a crafting recipe. We'll use it on and off like we did for those wand caps. And then it also enables you to make this shadow fortress armor, which is pretty much the same as standard fortress armor. However, you get the drastic damage reduction from fortress armor, but in addition, during the night, it kind of gets a boost as well, and you get an even higher reduction of damage. Now this armor does have pretty high warping effects, V discount of 7% and warping 5 on the head, 5 on the chest, 5 on the legs as well. And it does take blocks of that shadow metal and some of these warp shards on top of the thaumium armor. So it is kind of expensive to make, but it does still enable you to use the faceplates and do all the standard stuff that you would do with the normal fortress armor. So just kind of a nice little upgrade there, especially during the night. It is quite stout. Let's see, for the crimson stuff that we talked about earlier, you're going to need to craft yourself one of these crystalline daggers to start with. It requires an Essentia crystallizer, a diamond, and a piece of shadow metal. And if we grab one of these, let's go out here. Pretty much anything that you kill with this has a chance to, there we go, drop some of these crystalline blood droplets. And what we're going to do with those, yeah, right here, we can use that with enchanted fabric to make our crimson fabric that we used earlier in making those wand caps. And then we can also use it to make these crimson platings. So you get 16 of these with 4 crystalline blood droplets and a piece of iron, which you notice I got 2 from that one slime. So these will go pretty far, which is kind of nice. Now then there's also this crimson blade, and it takes the dagger, some blood droplets, a void sword, crimson fabric, and some crimson platings, as well as a bit of aspects here. I'm not going over all the aspects because they all take a lot of generally alienus, perdido, vacuos, you know, some of the darker elements. But this Crimson Blade is kind of like the upgrade to the dagger. If I can find it here in any eye. Okay, let me see if I can just pull it up. Come on, there it is. Okay, so let's grab ourselves one of these. And what this does is anything that you hit with this will also get weakness in addition to sapping the blood out of it as well. So there was some blood, and yeah, but it's going to give them the weakness, plus you get a 1.5 extra attack damage on it. So it's just kind of an upgrade for that. Then there's also this tier 5 upgrade, and we'll get into the Mage's Mace Focus in a minute, but this allows your Mage's Mace Focus to get the Bloodlust ability, which will actually cover foci maybe next. Yeah, I think next. And then lastly, there's this Crimson Praetor armor, which is a combination of the Crimson Plating, the Crimson Fabric, Eldritch Eyes, and it's basically an upgrade to just the standard Crimson armor. If you notice over here, we can actually craft that Crimson armor, the Crimson Cult stuff, and this is really just an upgrade from that. You've got a little bit more defense on it, and sorry about that. And it's really just kind of an upgrade for that. Nothing too crazy. So next up, let's take a quick look at the initial foci. We'll cover these foci a little bit later, but the starter foci, there's Tainted Storm, Mage's Mace, and Tainted Shockwave. So let's move some of this stuff out of the way here. Alright, so Tainted Storm, Tainted Shockwave, and Mage's Mace right there. Okay, so the Tainted Storm is actually a lot of fun. You can shoot these taint bubbles, and it's kind of like an AoE, and it will apply like a tainted effect to the enemies. They'll take damage over time, and it also does quite a bit of damage if you notice. If we come over here to say like a Chocobo, which has a bit more health, we can really see the full effect of the damage on it. Well, if you notice, you can kind of work through it pretty quick. And all these sheep are getting like poison effects, warp effects from it. So kind of nice. The Tainted Shockwave is probably my favorite. It's more of a defensive tool, but it can also be used for offense due to the fall damage and everything. But if you just take this and right click, you notice it blows back all the NPCs in the area. It does have about a 15-second cooldown, but definitely worth it. You know, if you're in a tight spot, and I can also see it being very useful, for Guardian of Gaia fight as well. So, from Britannia. So, and then lastly, there's this Mage's Mace, which basically this is going to turn your turn your wand into a melee weapon. So if you notice, I can just smack these guys with the wand and it just insta-kills them. So if we take a look in here, it takes a little bit of V per hit, but with the Mage's Mace, 15 attack damage when it's equipped. And in addition, you can actually upgrade it like other foci, and it will increase the damage per hit. So it could become a very powerful melee weapon if you upgrade it. And it's fairly cheap to make, I'd say. The only thing it really requires, it's really difficult, is the block of shadow metal. So, next up I want to cover this little area here, which we've already covered, the Shards of Creation. But there's these Boots of the Voidwalker and the Voidwalker Sash of Runic Shielding. Really, really nice. Sorry. The Voidwalker's sash here does require a Primordial Pearl, bit of Void Metal, bit of Shadow Metal, and some Shadow Cloth. However, it does upgrade this to a Runic Shield plus 20, and still goes in the belt slot and everything. So pretty nice. I've actually got one equipped on right now. Yeah, that's why. Let me switch over to. Okay, switch over to survival here. I've got one in here, and if you notice, if I'm just wearing this, it's really not much of a speed boost. You notice it says that the speed boost is enabled. Well, what it does is if you use the boots of the Voidwalker, it's going to enable you to have quite a bit of a speed boost. Pretty much the upgraded version of Boots of the Traveler. So, these Boots of the Voidwalker, that for one, they have these really cool particle effects, which I'll show you that, and they also negate all fall damage, and they give you a speed increase. So, actually, let me pull off this so you can see the speed increase first without the Voidwalker sash. So you've got a decent speed increase, a little bit faster than Boots of the Traveler. However, and the particle effect, if you notice, I have like a black fog coming off from behind me. But if we were to, say, throw on this Voidwalker sash, in addition to this, we got quite a bit more speed now from changing over to that. So definitely kind of a nice upgrade. As far as that goes. So, and then lastly, there's this Primal Blade of Corruption, which this thing is a lot of fun. I was playing with this earlier. It's rather expensive, if you notice. It's one of the largest arcane infusions. I believe it's the largest in this mod, but it has a whopping 14.5 attack damage. Very, very nice. It does have Warping 5 on it. But if you notice, we need a Primal Crusher, Shadow Metal, Void Metal, Primal Charms. We need a Crystalline Dagger, a Void Sword, decent amount of elements and everything. But if we were to grab one of these, one thing to note, this does apply a weakness and a hunger effect to the enemies. Has a really high attack damage, but the best thing is if you were to block with this, if you notice, it pulls in all the enemies or any kind of creatures and stuff in the vicinity and just starts ticking them for damage, as well as applying that debuff to them as well. So it's like a 15 block radius for this. So a lot of fun to play with, and it can also pull them up if you're flying. So probably one of my favorite items in this mod, personally. And then after that, we've got a bit more foci, and then we've also got this little area here, which this area is really, really cool. Void Metal is just a standard straight Thaumcraft mechanic, but there's this Crimson Cult Voidtouch armor, so you can use like your standard Crimson Cult stuff and give it Voidtouched, which what that's going to do is it's going to allow that armor to auto repair itself, just using a few Void Metal ingots and some essence, or some essentia, sorry, in your wand, in your arcane infusion. Sorry, I was getting all mixed up in my head. But yeah, it's going to give Voidtouch to all this stuff, making it quite a bit better with that auto enchant or auto repairing ability. Then there's this Voidtouch Praetor armor, so you can use the Crimson Praetor armor to make this Voidtouch versions. Basically just the same, it's just a bit more expensive. And then there's the Void Fortress armor, which is basically just an upgrade to the standard Void armor for a Void Fortress version. So you got a little bit of Void Metal. It's not too expensive. Just a kind of a little bit different, and it gives you the warping effect, which is kind of useful in this pack in a way, because the warping will definitely help you as far as the wands and stuff. And then lastly in here, We've got some friends somewhere around here. Okay. Well, anyway. And then lastly, there is this Filmic Disassembler, which is probably... This is also one of my favorite items because I'm a big fan of Mechanism. If you don't already know, I love that mod. And this adds the Atomic Disassembler from Mechanism to Thaumcraft. Has 20 attack damage, and if you don't know about the Atomic Disassembler, it acts pretty much as any tool and has a very high or a very fast mining speed. However, one thing to note about this is it doesn't keep the ability to vein mine like how the Atomic Disassembler does. You are going to need this Thaumic alloy with thaumium and void metal and a diamond to craft it. But since it has the void effect, yeah, it automatically repairs itself, so it's never going to break. Works as all your tools, can dig, cut wood, and so on. Let me go ahead and grab one of these and I'll show you that in action. And let me go ahead and switch these out actually. Okay. So we'll go ahead and switch over to survival mode. Oops. And we got pretty powerful attack, and in addition, you know, it digs just like the Atomic Disassembler very quickly, and can also cut down wood fairly fast. Just a really nice mining tool, and I'm really happy to see that it was kind of ported over into Thaumcraft. It was kind of excited when I saw that. And if you notice in the book here, it actually says copyright Mechanism, and there's a reference to Aiden Brady here at the beginning, which is pretty nice. And then the last thing to cover here is just some other wand foci that's added with the pack. So we'll just quickly take a look at those. We've got time, weather, eldritch, and then this warped eye, which isn't really a focus. It does work a little bit different. So we'll grab that. We'll grab weather, eldritch, and time. So first off, actually this is perfect because the sun's going down. First off, we'll take a look at the weather foci. So if you use this one, you notice it does have a cooldown of 30 seconds. But if it's not raining, it's going to start raining when you use this foci, and vice versa. So you can stop the rain or start the rain using this, with just a 30-second cooldown, which really isn't too bad, considering I don't really see why you'd need to change the weather within 30 seconds of changing it. So definitely kind of nice. Now the time does pretty much the same thing. If it's nighttime, oh, I've still got the cooldown. I've noticed it kind of shares the cooldowns between them. But if it's nighttime, we can change it to day with just a click of this wand, and vice versa. Just like the weather one. And once again, this one has a 30-second cooldown, but that shouldn't be a problem. And then the last foci that we've got here is this Eldritch Foci, which I really like. By the way, the crafting for these, they are rather expensive, mainly because they take these shards of creation that we covered earlier. The same with weather. Weather also taking shock and frost foci. And then the Eldritch one does require the 2 of the portable holes and then 2 Eldritch eyes in addition. But this Eldritch one, I personally love it a lot. The Eldritch blasts that the bosses in the Outer Worlds use, you can actually fire these, and they're quite a bit more powerful as well. They have a damage boost over the standard ones. So they also apply the wither effect too, by the way, if stuff survives. And I have noticed you can actually sometimes manage to hit 2 enemies with this if they're pretty close to each other, when I was playing with it earlier. Now there is like a half-second cooldown, but really that's not too big of an issue. And you'll sometimes get warped from using it as well. So just be aware of that. But let's see. Yeah. you get 5 hearts of damage from the normal Guardian's blast, but these are a little bit more powerful, so pretty nice to have. And then the last item here is the warped eye. So when you first get this, it's going to say there's no soul bound to this eye, and you can right click it to bind it to you. And if you notice, we have a little GUI here that's got all 6 of the primal aspects around us. So what we can do is we can say right here, we'll land right here in our little area, and we'll mark, oh, it's wanting us to mark Perdito, so let's see. Yeah, we can switch it over. Let's mark Terra. And then let's fly out here and say mark Ignis. And then what we can do is we can go and look at our Terra and teleport right to where we were. And it's got a 30-second cooldown, but it is a pretty nice little teleporting item that enables you to have 6 different locations locked in. And kind of really, I love the little HUD effect that this has with the 6 elements. So kind of a neat little addition to the pack. And that's pretty much what this mod is. It's a lot, that's what I like about it, is it's a lot of different, mainly equipment related items, but to really expand on the void and the taint aspect of Thaumcraft, which I absolutely love. I felt like, you know, just standard Thaumcraft didn't do enough with it. And this also, if you want to download the mod, I'm not going to read through it because I know the video is already running kind of long, but this does add some neat little backstory, and then like right here, no, not right there, right here, talks about the creation of the world and everything, and really puts the mod into the lore of Thaumcraft, which I absolutely love that. I was reading through that earlier. So definitely a mod worth checking out. Sadly, I haven't really seen any mod packs so far running it. Hopefully we'll see that in the future. Like I said, it is fairly newer. I mean, it's been out for at least 6-7 months, but you know, I'm hoping to see it more in the future. But you know, you can download it on the Curse Forge or something and just throw it into your pack if you want to try it out and have some fun with it, especially if you're really into Thaumcraft or planning to get into it. So definitely a mod I suggest checking out. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the spotlight. I know it was a little bit different because it's mainly equipment and stuff that we were covering. Not a whole lot of blocks and machines or anything like that with this mod. But I hope that you guys enjoyed it. And if you did, as always, please comment, like, subscribe. If you have any suggestions or things you would have liked to seen or think I could have done better, feel free to let me know. I'm always trying to get better at this kind of stuff because I'm still fairly new to it. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you learned something, and I hope you check out the mod. It's actually really, really cool. And yeah, until next spotlight or next episode, do take care, and I hope you guys join me next time.